William Martinez had always been a man of routine. At 62 years old, he followed the same schedule every single day. Wake up at 6 in the morning, drink his black coffee while reading the newspaper, then head to his job at the local hardware store where he had worked for over 30 years. His life was simple, predictable, and exactly how he liked it. The small town of Cedar Falls had been William's home his entire life. He knew every street, every neighbor, and every story that had ever unfolded in this quiet community. People respected William because he was honest, hardworking, and always willing to help anyone who needed it. He fixed broken faucets for elderly neighbors, helped young families move furniture, and never asked for anything in return. But William carried a heavy secret that weighed on his heart every single day. 25 years ago, his only son, Marcus, had left home after a terrible argument. The fight had been about Marcus's choice to pursue music instead of taking over the family hardware business. William, being old-fashioned and practical, couldn't understand why his son would choose such an uncertain path. He had said harsh words that night, words he regretted the moment they left his mouth. Marcus had packed his bags the next morning and left Cedar Falls without saying goodbye. William had been too proud and stubborn to go after him. He kept telling himself that Marcus would come back when he realized his mistake. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and months into years. The silence between father and son grew, deeper with each passing day. William's wife Sarah had tried many times to convince him to reach out to Marcus. She had found their son's address through mutual friends and even discovered that Marcus had become quite successful as a musician in Nashville. But William's pride always got in the way. He convinced himself that if Marcus wanted to come home, he would do it on his own. Sarah never stopped hoping that her husband and son would reconcile before it was too late. 3 years ago, Sarah had fallen ill with cancer. During her final months, she begged William to contact Marcus to let their son know about her condition. She wanted to see her boy one last time, to hold him and tell him how proud she was of his accomplishments. But William couldn't bring himself to make that phone call. He was afraid of rejection, afraid that Marcus would hang up on him or refuse to come home. Sarah passed away on a cold December morning, and Marcus never knew his mother was sick. William had to live with the crushing guilt of keeping them apart during her final days. At the funeral, he kept looking toward the church entrance, hoping against hope that Marcus would somehow appear. But he never came, because he never knew after Sarah's death, William became even more isolated. He threw himself into his work at the hardware store, staying late every evening to avoid going home to the empty house. The neighbors tried to include him in community events, but he politely declined most invitations. He felt like he didn't deserve happiness or companionship after what he had done. The house felt enormous without Sarah's laughter filling the rooms. Her pictures were everywhere, reminding William of all the family moments they had shared when Marcus was young. There were photos of birthday parties, Christmas mornings, and family vacations to the lake. In every picture, Marcus was smiling, full of life and dreams. William wondered if his son still had that same bright smile, or if life had hardened him the way it had hardened his father. William's daily routine became his only comfort. He would wake up, make coffee for one instead of two, read the newspaper alone, and head to work. At the hardware store, customers still came to him for advice about home repairs and building projects. He was known throughout Cedar Falls as the man who could fix anything. But William knew there was one thing he couldn't fix: the broken relationship with his son. Sometimes late at night, William would sit in his living room chair and imagine what it would be like if Marcus walked through the front door. He pictured their reunion, the words he would say, the apologies he would make. He rehearsed conversations in his mind, always hoping he would get the chance to make things right. But as more time passed, that hope seemed to fade a little more each day. The mailman, Jerry, had been delivering mail to William's house for 15 years. Jerry was a friendly man who always took time to chat with the people on his route. He had watched William change over the years, especially after Sarah's death. Jerry could see the sadness in William's eyes and wished there was something he could do to help. William's neighbors, the Johnsons, often worried about him. Mrs. Johnson would bring him casseroles and baked goods, trying to make sure he was eating properly. She had known the Martinez family since Marcus was a little boy, and she remembered how close father and son used to be. Marcus had been the kind of child who followed his father everywhere, wanting to learn about tools and how to build things. The local barber, Pete, had been cutting William's hair for decades. During their monthly appointments, Pete would try to get William to talk about his feelings, but William always changed the subject. Pete understood that some men weren't comfortable sharing their emotions, but he could see that William was carrying a heavy burden. As another winter approached Cedar Falls, William found himself thinking more and more about Marcus. He wondered if his son was married, if he had children, if he was happy with the life he had built. William realized that he might be a grandfather and not even know it. The thought both excited and terrified him. He had missed so much of his son's life, and now he might be missing his grandchildren's lives too. The hardware store had been in William's family for 3 generations. His own father had started the business, and William had always assumed Marcus would continue the tradition. Now, with no heir to pass it on to, William knew the store would eventually be sold to strangers. It seemed like another failure in his long list of regrets. Every evening, as William locked up the store and walked home through the quiet streets of Cedar Falls, he looked at the houses with warm lights glowing in the windows. He could see families gathered around dinner tables, children doing homework, parents helping with school projects. These glimpses of normal family life reminded him of what he had lost and what he had thrown away through his stubborn pride. Winter settled over Cedar Falls like a heavy blanket, bringing with it the kind of cold that seemed to seep into William's bones. The hardware store stayed busy with people needing supplies for heating repairs and winter preparations, but William found himself going through the motions without his usual enthusiasm. Everything felt gray and lifeless, matching the overcast sky that had hung over the town for weeks. One particularly cold Tuesday morning, William arrived at the store to find a young woman waiting by the front door. She was bundled up in a thick coat, stamping her feet to keep warm. William recognized her as Jennifer Chen, a new resident who had moved to Cedar Falls 6 months ago with her husband and 2 small children. She worked as a nurse at the county hospital and had stopped by the store a few times before for basic household items. Jennifer looked distressed as William unlocked the door and invited her inside. Her usual cheerful demeanor was replaced with worry lines across her forehead. She explained that her furnace had stopped working during the night, and with 2 young children at home, she was desperate to get it fixed as quickly as possible. The repair company couldn't come out until the following day, and she was afraid her family would freeze. Without hesitation, William grabbed his toolbox and followed Jennifer to her house. The Martinez family had always believed in helping neighbors in need, and this was exactly the kind of situation where William felt most useful. As they drove through the snowy streets, Jennifer told him more about her family. Her husband, David, worked long hours at the bank, and her children, Emma and Michael, were 4 and 6 years old. At Jennifer's house, William quickly diagnosed the problem. The furnace's pilot light had gone out, and there was a small issue with the gas line connection. It was the kind of repair that looked complicated to someone without experience, but was actually quite simple for someone with William's skills. He worked methodically, explaining each step to Jennifer so she would know what to do if it happened again. While William worked, Emma and Michael watched him with wide, curious eyes. They had never seen anyone fix a furnace before, and they peppered him with questions about his tools and what he was doing. William found himself smiling for the first time in weeks as he patiently answered their questions. Michael reminded him so much of Marcus at that age, always wanting to know how things worked and eager to help with any project. Emma, the younger child, was particularly taken with William's toolbox. She carefully examined each tool, asking what it was used for and if she could hold it. William showed her how to use a screwdriver properly and let her help him tighten one of the screws. Her face lit up with pride at being able to contribute to the repair, and William felt a warmth in his chest that he hadn't experienced in years. As William finished the repair and tested the furnace to make sure it was working properly, Jennifer insisted on making him lunch. She prepared hot soup and sandwiches while the children continued to follow William around, fascinated by this kind grandfather figure who had appeared in their home. William found himself telling them stories about his years in the hardware business and some of the unusual repair jobs he had encountered. During lunch, Jennifer mentioned that she had grown up in a military family and had moved around a lot as a child. She understood what it was like to be separated from family members, sometimes for years at a time. She talked about how difficult those separations had been, and how important it was to stay connected with the people you love, even when circumstances made it challenging. William listened carefully to Jennifer's words, feeling as though she was speaking directly to his situation without even knowing it. She talked about her own father, who had been stationed overseas for much of her childhood, and how they had worked hard to maintain their relationship despite the distance. She mentioned that technology had made it so much easier to stay in touch with family members, even when they were far away. After lunch, as William prepared to leave, little Michael asked if he could visit the hardware store sometime. He wanted to see all the different tools and learn more about fixing things. William's heart swelled at the boy's enthusiasm, and he promised that Michael could visit whenever he wanted. Emma chimed in that she wanted to come too, and William assured her that she was welcome as well. Walking back to his truck, William felt something shifting inside him. The interaction with Jennifer's family had awakened feelings he had buried deep after Marcus left. He remembered how much joy he had found in teaching his son about tools and repairs, in passing down the knowledge that had been passed down to him. For the first time in years, he felt like he had something valuable to offer. That evening, instead of his usual routine of dinner and television, William sat at his kitchen table with a piece of paper and a pen. He started to write a letter to Marcus, then stopped and crumpled it up. He tried again, but the words wouldn't come the way he wanted them to. How do you apologize for 25 years of silence? How do you explain why you let pride keep you from reaching out when your wife was dying? William walked into Sarah's sewing room, which he had left exactly as it was when she passed away. Her reading glasses were still on the table next to her favorite chair, and her current needlepoint project was stretched on its frame, waiting for her return. On the bookshelf were photo albums documenting their entire family life together. He pulled out an album from Marcus's teenage years and slowly turned the pages. There was Marcus at his high school graduation, beaming with pride. Marcus at his first job at the hardware store, learning to operate the cash register. Marcus with his first guitar, the one he had saved up months to buy with his part-time job. Earnings. William had been so focused on what he saw as Marcus's rebellion that he had forgotten how responsible and hard-working his son had always been. In one photo, Marcus was teaching a younger neighbor child how to change a bicycle tire. William remembered that day clearly. Marcus had always been patient and kind with younger children, just like William had been with Emma and Michael today. The realization hit William like a physical blow. Marcus had learned those qualities from watching his father, and William had been too angry to see it. William closed the album and returned to the kitchen table. This time, instead of trying to write a letter, he picked up the phone and dialed information. His hands shook as he asked for listings in Nashville, Tennessee. The operator found several numbers for people with the last name Martinez, but William didn't know which one might be his son. He wrote down 3 numbers and stared at them for a long time. The first number he tried was disconnected. The second was answered by an elderly woman who didn't know any Marcus Martinez. William's courage was failing him, and he almost hung up without trying the third number. But something about his time with Jennifer's family had given him a small spark of hope that he didn't want to extinguish. He dialed the third number with trembling fingers, his heart pounding so hard he was sure anyone nearby would be able to hear it. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. William was about to hang up when someone answered. "Hello?" The voice on the other end was deeper than William remembered, but unmistakably familiar. It was Marcus, his son, after 25 years of silence. William's mouth went dry, and for a moment he couldn't speak. All the words he had practiced, all the apologies he had rehearsed, disappeared from his mind. He could hear music playing softly in the background and what sounded like children laughing. Marcus had a family. William had grandchildren he had never met. "Hello? Is anyone there?" Marcus asked again, and William could hear the slight impatience in his voice that meant he was about to hang up. "Marcus," William finally managed to whisper, It's your father." The silence that followed felt like it lasted forever. William could hear his son's breathing change, could almost feel the shock traveling through the phone lines. When Marcus finally spoke, his voice was carefully controlled, giving nothing away. "Dad? After all these years, you're calling now?" There was no anger in Marcus's voice, which somehow made it worse. There was just a tired sadness that cut William to the core. William took a shaky breath. "I know I have no right to call after so long. I know I've been a terrible father. But I had to try to reach you before it's too late." "Too late for what?" Marcus asked quietly. The floodgates opened, and William found himself telling Marcus everything. He talked about Sarah's illness and death, about the regret that had eaten away at him every single day, about the empty house, and the loneliness that felt like a physical weight on his chest. He apologized for the harsh words he had said those years ago, for his stubborn pride that had kept them apart. Marcus listened without interrupting, and when William finally finished, there was another long silence. William could hear children's voices in the background asking, "Daddy, who's on the phone?" and Marcus gently telling them to play in the other room. "Mom died 3 years ago, and you didn't tell me," Marcus said finally. His voice cracked slightly on the words. "I could have been there. I could have said goodbye." William felt tears streaming down his face. "I know. That's the worst part of all this. She wanted to see you so badly, especially near the end. She begged me to call you, but I was too proud, too afraid you would reject us. I failed her, and I failed you." "She was sick for how long?" Marcus asked. "About 8 months from diagnosis to—" William couldn't finish the sentence. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was softer. "Tell me about her last days. I need to know." William spent the next hour telling Marcus about Sarah's final months, about how brave she had been, how she had talked about him constantly, how proud she was of his music career that she followed online. He told Marcus about the scrapbook Sarah had kept, filled with newspaper clippings and internet articles about his performances and albums. "She knew about my music?" Marcus asked, surprised. "She knew everything. She bought all your albums, went to your website, read every review. She was so proud, Marcus. We both were, even if I was too stubborn to admit it." Marcus's voice was thick with emotion when he spoke. "I have 2 children, Dad. Sophia is 8, and Jake is 5. They don't even know they have a grandfather in Cedar Falls." William's heart nearly stopped. "What are their names again?" "Sophia and Jake. And my wife's name is Carmen. We've been married for 10 years. William grabbed a pen and wrote down the names, his hands shaking. "I want to know everything about them. Do they like music like their father? What are they interested in?" For the first time in the conversation, Marcus laughed, and William was transported back 25 years to when his son was young. Sophia plays piano and violin. She's incredibly talented, probably better than I was at her age. Jake is more like you, actually. He loves building things with his hands, taking apart toys to see how they work. William felt a surge of hope. Maybe someday I could meet them. I know I have no right to ask, but I would love to be part of their lives if you'd let me. Marcus was quiet for a long time. I don't know, Dad. It's been so long. I've built a life here, and I'm not sure how to fit the past into it. William understood. I'm not asking for anything you can't give. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry, and that I love you, and that not a day has gone by that I haven't regretted the way I handled things. I need time to think about all this, Marcus said. It's a lot to process. Of course, I understand completely. But Marcus, can I ask just one favor? What's that? Can I call you again sometime? Maybe we could talk regularly, get to know each other again slowly? Marcus hesitated. Yes, I think I'd like that. Maybe Sunday evenings? After the kids are in bed? William felt like his heart might burst with gratitude. Sunday evenings would be perfect. Same time next week? Same time next week, Marcus agreed. After they hung up, William sat in his kitchen for a long time, staring at the paper where he had written his grandchildren's names, Sophia and Jake. He had grandchildren named Sophia and Jake, and one of E. Them liked to build things just like he did. William walked back into Sarah's sewing room and picked up the photo album again. This time, instead of focusing on the pain of lost years, he looked at the pictures with hope for the future. Maybe it wasn't too late to be the father and grandfather he should have been all along. The next morning at the hardware store, William found himself humming an old song Sarah used to love. Mrs. Peterson, a regular customer, commented that he seemed different, happier somehow. William just smiled and helped her find the right screws for her kitchen cabinet repair. When Jennifer Chen stopped by later that day with Emma and Michael, William was especially glad to see them. The children had drawn him pictures of the furnace repair, complete with stick figures of themselves helping with the tools. William hung the pictures behind the counter where everyone could see them. You look like you got some good news, Jennifer observed while the children explored the store. William nodded. I talked to my son last night. First time in 25 years. Jennifer's face lit up. Oh, William. That's wonderful. How did it go? Better than I deserved, William said honestly. We're going to start talking regularly. Try to rebuild what we lost. That's the best news I've heard all week, Jennifer said, squeezing William's hand. Family is everything. As William watched Emma and Michael examining the different types of screwdrivers, he thought about Sophia and Jake, his grandchildren he had never met. Maybe someday soon he would be showing them the same tools, teaching them the same lessons he had once taught their father. The future, which had seemed so bleak just 24 hours ago, now held possibilities that William had never dared to imagine. Sunday evening couldn't come soon enough. Sunday evening came slowly for William. He had spent the entire week thinking about what he would say to Marcus, how he could continue building the bridge between them that had begun with their first phone call. He found himself paying attention to children more than usual, watching how they interacted with their parents and grandparents in the store, trying to imagine what it would be like to have that kind of relationship with Sophia and Jake. At exactly 7 o'clock, William dialed Marcus's number. This time his hands weren't shaking, and his heart, while still beating fast with anticipation, wasn't pounding with fear. Marcus answered on the second ring. Hi, Dad, Marcus said, and William felt a warmth spread through his chest at being called Dad again. Hello, son. How was your week? They talked for over an hour that first Sunday, with Marcus telling William about his music studio, the album he was currently recording, and the local Nashville music scene. William shared stories about the hardware store and the people in Cedar Falls, many of whom Marcus remembered from his childhood. As the weeks passed, their Sunday conversations became the highlight of William's week. Gradually, Marcus began sharing more personal details about his family. He told William about Sophia's piano recital, where she had performed a piece she had composed herself. He described Jake's latest building project, an elaborate fort made from cardboard boxes that had taken over their living room for 2 weeks. "He sounds just like you did at that age," William said one Sunday evening. "Always building something, always asking how things worked." "Carmen says he gets it from my side of the family," Marcus replied. "She found him taking apart the coffee maker last week. He wanted to see what made the water hot." William laughed. "You did the exact same thing when you were 6. Took apart your mother's toaster. She was furious until you managed to put it back together, and it worked even better than before." These shared memories began to bridge the gap between them. Marcus started asking about William's childhood, about how he had learned his trade, about the early days of the hardware store. William found himself telling stories he hadn't thought about in years, remembering the good times instead of focusing only on the painful separation. One Sunday, Marcus mentioned that Carmen was curious about William. "She's been asking when she might get to talk to you. She's the one who encouraged me to keep taking your calls, actually. She said it's never too late to heal family wounds." William's voice caught with emotion. "I would love to talk to her if she's willing, and someday, maybe I could talk to the children too." "Actually," Marcus said, sounding nervous, "Sophia has been asking about her grandfather in Cedar Falls. I've been telling her stories about growing up there, about the hardware store, and about Grandma Sarah. She wants to know if you look like me." "What did you tell her?" "I told her you're much more handsome," Marcus said, and William could hear the smile in his voice. The next Sunday, Marcus put Sophia on the phone. Her voice was clear and confident, without any of the shyness William had expected. "Hi, Grandpa William," she said, as if she had been talking to him her whole life. "Daddy says you have a store with all kinds of tools." William's heart melted instantly. "I do, sweetheart. Maybe someday you can come visit and I'll show you around?" "I would like that very much. Daddy says you taught him everything he knows about fixing things. Can you teach me too?" "I would love to teach you anything you want to learn," William said, meaning every word. Sophia told him about her music lessons, her school friends, and her pet hamster named Peanut. She asked if Cedar Falls had snow in the winter and if William knew how to ice skate. She wanted to know if he liked music, and if he had ever heard any of her daddy's songs. When Jake got on the phone, he was full of questions about tools and building projects. "Daddy says you can fix anything," Jake said with obvious admiration. "Can you really fix anything?" "Well, I try my best," William said. "What kinds of things do you like to build?" Jake launched into an enthusiastic description of his latest creation, a race car track made from cardboard tubes and duct tape. He had engineered a system of ramps and curves that allowed his toy cars to race through the entire house. William found himself genuinely impressed by the 8-year-old's ingenuity and problem-solving skills. After talking to both children, William felt a profound sense of loss for all the years he had missed, but also an incredible hope for the future. These were his grandchildren, and they wanted to know him. They weren't angry about his absence because they didn't fully understand what it meant yet. To them, he was simply Grandpa William, the grandfather who lived far away but was now part of their lives. Carmen got on the phone near the end of the call, and her voice was warm and welcoming. "Thank you for making Marcus so happy," she said. "I haven't seen him smile this much in years. He's been carrying the sadness of missing his family for our entire marriage." William felt tears in his eyes. "Thank you for encouraging him to talk to me. I know I don't deserve this chance, but I'm grateful for it every day." "Everyone deserves a chance at forgiveness," Carmen said. "Marcus told me what happened between you two, and I understand why you both stayed away for so long. But pride is a cold companion and life is too short to waste on old hurts. As winter began to give way to spring in Cedar Falls, William found himself changing in ways he never expected. The Sunday phone calls had awakened something in him that had been dormant for years. He started paying more attention to his appearance, getting his hair cut more regularly and buying some new clothes. Mrs. Johnson commented that he looked 10 years younger than he had just a few months earlier. William also began making changes to his house. He cleaned out Sarah's sewing room and converted it into a workshop where he could build things for his grandchildren. He made a jewelry box for Sophia, complete with a music box mechanism that played Für Elise, her favorite piece. For Jake, he built a complex marble run with multiple levels and moving parts. When he told Marcus about the gifts during one of their Sunday calls, his son was quiet for a long moment. "Dad, you didn't have to do that." "I wanted to," William said. "I've missed so many birthdays and Christmases. I know I can't make up for lost time, but I want to show them that their grandfather in Cedar Falls thinks about them. Would you like to send the gifts to them? I could give you our address." William's hand shook as he wrote down Marcus's address in Nashville. Having that address felt like holding a key to a door he had thought was permanently closed. He carefully packaged the gifts and took them to the post office, including handwritten letters to each child. A week later, Marcus called on a Wednesday instead of waiting for Sunday. "Dad, the kids absolutely loved their gifts. Sophia has been playing that music box constantly, and Jake spent 3 hours setting up the marble run. They both want to call and thank you themselves." When Sophia called, her excitement was infectious. "Grandpa William, how did you know Für Elise is my favorite song? And the jewelry box is so beautiful. Mom says you made it with your own hands." Jake was equally thrilled with his gift. "The marble run is the coolest thing ever. I've been showing all my friends and they can't believe my grandpa built it. Can you teach me how to make one?" That night, William sat in his living room surrounded by pictures of his grandchildren that Marcus had started sending him. Sophia at her piano recital, Jake with his cardboard fort, both children together on Christmas morning. For the first time since Sarah's death, the house didn't feel empty. William realized that healing was possible, even after years of hurt and separation. Love had found a way to bridge the gap that pride and stubbornness had created. As he looked at the photos of his family, William allowed himself to imagine something he had never dared to dream about before. Maybe someday, they would all be together under the same roof. Spring in Cedar Falls brought with it a sense of renewal that William hadn't felt in years. The phone calls with Marcus and his family had become the anchor of William's week, but now they were talking more frequently. Sometimes Marcus would call on Wednesday evenings just to chat, and the children had started calling on their own to share exciting news from school or to ask their grandfather questions about how to fix broken toys. 3 months into their renewed relationship, Marcus called with news that made William's heart race with both excitement and terror. "Dad, Carmen and I have been talking, and we think it's time for a visit. We were wondering if we could come to Cedar Falls for a long weekend, maybe in a few weeks." William sat down heavily in his chair. He had dreamed of this moment, but had never quite believed it would actually happen. "You want to come here, all of you? If you'll have us. The kids are dying to see the hardware store and meet their grandfather in person. Carmen wants to see where I grew up, and I want to show them Mom's grave. I need to say goodbye properly." William felt tears streaming down his face. "Of course I'll have you. This house has been waiting for family to fill it again." The next few weeks were a whirlwind of preparation. William deep-cleaned every room in the house, bought new sheets and towels, and stocked the refrigerator with foods he hoped children would enjoy. He set up the spare bedrooms, putting fresh flowers from Sarah's garden in each room. In Sophia's room, he placed a small upright piano he had bought from a family whose daughter had gone off to college. In Jake's room, he set up a workbench, with child-sized tools and several building projects they could work on together. Mrs. Johnson and other neighbors offered to help with the preparations, bringing casseroles and offering to babysit if Marcus and Carmen wanted some time alone. The whole community seemed invested in this reunion, perhaps because everyone understood the importance of healing family wounds. The morning of their arrival, William was so nervous he could barely eat breakfast. He had changed clothes 3 times, wanting to look presentable but not formal. At 62, he was about to meet his grandchildren for the first time, and he had no idea what to expect. When the rental car pulled into his driveway, William's legs felt weak. He watched through the window as his son stepped out of the driver's seat. Marcus was taller than William remembered, with gray streaking through his dark hair and lines around his eyes that spoke of years of laughter and music. He looked successful and confident. But when their eyes met through the window, William saw the same uncertainty he felt himself. Carmen emerged from the passenger side, a petite woman with kind eyes and a warm smile. She immediately began helping the children out of the car, and William got his first real look at his grandchildren. Sophia was tall for 8 years old, with long dark hair and her father's expressive eyes. Jake was smaller and more compact, but moved with the quick energy of a child who was always building or taking apart something. William took a deep breath and opened the front door. For a moment, everyone stood frozen, unsure of how to bridge 25 years of separation. Then Jake broke the spell by running straight to William. "Grandpa William, are you really my grandpa? You look just like Daddy, but with more gray hair." William knelt down and hugged his grandson, feeling the solid warmth of the child in his arms. "I'm really your grandpa, Jake, and you're even more wonderful than I imagined." Sophia approached more cautiously, but when William extended his arm to include her in the hug, she stepped forward willingly. "Hi, Grandpa. Thank you for the music box. I brought my violin so I can play for you." William looked up at Marcus, who was standing a few feet away with tears in his eyes. Father and son looked at each other for a long moment, and then Marcus stepped forward and embraced William. It was awkward at first, both men uncertain after so many years, but then William felt his son relax against him, and the hug became real and healing. "I'm sorry," William whispered. "I'm so sorry for everything." "I know, Dad," Marcus whispered back. "I'm sorry, too. We both made mistakes." Carmen gave William a warm hug and said, "Thank you for having us. Your home is beautiful." The first day was filled with tours and discoveries. William showed them through the house, pointing out photos and sharing memories. In Sarah's garden, he told them about their grandmother's love for flowers and how she had spent hours tending to her roses and vegetables. Marcus knelt down and touched the soil, remembering working alongside his mother in this same garden as a child. At the hardware store, Jake was in absolute heaven. He wanted to examine every tool, understand how each machine worked, and help William with customer orders. Sophia was fascinated by the organization system and the way her grandfather knew exactly where everything was located. She helped him fill orders and was amazed by how many people knew her grandfather and trusted. His advice? "Your grandpa is famous around here," Mrs. Peterson told Sophia while William was mixing paint for her kitchen. "He's fixed half the things in this town, and he never charges people fairly. Always undercharges because he wants to help." Marcus watched his father interact with customers and saw something he had forgotten from his childhood: how respected and loved William was in this community. People didn't just come to him for hardware, they came for advice, for conversation, for the steady presence he provided in their lives. That evening, Sophia played her violin for the family, performing several pieces she had been practicing. Her technique was impressive for her age, and her musical sensitivity reminded William painfully of Sarah, who had always had an ear for music even though she never learned to play an instrument herself. When Sophia finished, William applauded, enthusiastically. "Your grandmother would have loved hearing you play," he told her. "She always said music was the language of the heart." Jake showed William his latest invention, a contraption made from rubber bands and cardboard that could launch small objects across the room with surprising accuracy. William was genuinely impressed by the engineering principles his grandson had figured out on his own. "How did you know to angle it like that?" William asked, examining the launcher. "I tried it straight first, but the things kept falling down too fast," Jake explained. "So I thought maybe if I pointed it up a little, they would go farther. And they did!" William spent the next hour helping Jake refine the design, showing him how to make the base more stable and how to calculate the best angle for different distances. Working together on the project, William was reminded of all the hours he had spent teaching Marcus similar principles when he was young. On Saturday, they visited Sarah's grave together. William had been dreading this moment, afraid it would be too emotional for everyone. But Marcus had been right. He needed to say goodbye properly, and his children needed to know something about the grandmother they had never met. William had brought flowers from Sarah's garden, and each family member placed some on the grave. Marcus knelt down and talked to his mother as if she were there, telling her about his music, his family, his life in Nashville. He apologized for staying away, for missing her final years, for letting pride keep him from bringing his children to meet her. "I know you're watching over all of us, Mom," Marcus said softly. "And I know you're happy that Dad and I found our way back to each other. The kids would have loved you so much." Sophia asked if she could play her violin at the grave, and she performed Amazing Grace, a song she had learned for a school concert. Her pure, clear notes seemed to hang in the air, and William felt Sarah's presence more strongly than he had since her death. He was certain she was there with them, finally seeing the family reunion she had prayed for. That evening, after the children were in bed, Marcus, Carmen, and William sat on the front porch talking. The conversation was easier now, with some of the initial awkwardness gone. Marcus asked about his father's health, about the hardware store, about whether William ever felt lonely in the big house by himself. "I was lonely," William admitted, "especially after your mother died. But talking to you and the kids has brought me back to life. I didn't realize how much I had shut down until I started opening up again." Carmen asked about Sarah, wanting to know what kind of person she had been, what she had loved, how she had spent her days. William found himself sharing stories he hadn't told in years, remembering his wife's laughter, her kindness, her unwavering faith that everything would work out for the best. "She never stopped believing you and Marcus would reconcile," William told Carmen. "Even when I had given up hope, she would say, 'Love always finds a way.' I thought she was being foolish, but she was right." Marcus leaned back in his chair, looking up at the stars that were visible in Cedar Falls' dark sky, in a way they never were in Nashville. "I forgot how quiet it is here. In the city there's always noise, always something happening. This feels peaceful." "It is peaceful," William said. "Sometimes too peaceful for an old man rattling around by himself. But it's a good place to raise children. You had a happy childhood here before things went wrong between us." "I did have a happy childhood," Marcus said quietly. "I've been so focused on how it ended that I sometimes forgot how good most of it was. You taught me so much, Dad. Not just about tools and fixing things, but about integrity, about helping people, about doing good work even when no one is watching." William felt a tightness in his throat. "I taught you music too, whether I wanted to admit it or not. All those hours you spent listening to the radio while we worked in the shop, all the times you hummed while you organized inventory. Music was always part of who you were, and I should have supported that instead of fighting it." The three of them sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the night sounds of Cedar Falls, crickets chirping, a dog barking in the distance, the soft rustle of wind through the trees. It felt like a perfect ending to a day that had healed wounds William had thought were permanent. As they prepared to go inside, Marcus put his hand on his father's shoulder. "Dad, I want you to know that this weekend has meant everything to me. The kids are going to remember this trip for the rest of their lives." William looked at his son, This successful man who had built a beautiful life despite the pain of their separation. I want to be part of their lives going forward, if you'll let me. I know I can't make up for lost time, but I want to be the grandfather they deserve. You already are, Marcus said simply. Sunday morning came too quickly for William. He woke up early and made breakfast for his family, still hardly believing that his house was full of voices and laughter again. Jake had bounced into the kitchen at dawn, eager to continue their building projects, while Sophia practiced scales on the piano, filling the house with music for the first time in decades. As they sat around the breakfast table, Carmen mentioned that they would need to leave after lunch to catch their flight back to Nashville. The weight of impending separation settled over everyone, but this time it felt different. This wasn't the angry, permanent goodbye of 25 years ago. This was the natural end of a visit, with plans already being made for the next one. Can we come back for Christmas, Daddy? Sophia asked. I want to see what Cedar Falls looks like with snow. And I want to finish building that birdhouse with Grandpa, Jake added, syrup dripping down his chin. Marcus looked at William questioningly. Would you want us for Christmas? It might be chaotic with the kids opening presents and making noise, William felt his heart swell. This house needs chaos. It needs children and Christmas morning and all the noise that comes with a real family celebration. After breakfast, William had one more surprise for his family. He led them to the backyard where he had been working on a special project in secret. Under a canvas tarp was a wooden swing set he had built specifically for his grandchildren's visit. It wasn't fancy, but it was solid and safe, constructed with the same care he put into everything he made. Jake whooped with excitement and immediately climbed onto one of the swings. Sophia was more reserved but clearly pleased, running her hands along the smooth wood and admiring the craftsmanship. Marcus stood beside his father, both men watching the children play. When did you have time to build this? Marcus asked. I've been working on it for weeks, a little bit each evening after work. I wanted them to have something here that was just theirs, something that would be waiting for them whenever they come back. Carmen took pictures of the children on the swings, promising to send copies to William. As she watched through her camera lens, she said, You know, they're going to want to visit more often now. Every school break, every summer. Are you prepared for that? William laughed. I'm prepared to be the best grandfather I can be, however often they want to come. As the morning passed, William found himself memorizing moments. Jake's concentration, as he worked with the small tools William had bought just for him. Sophia playing a duet with herself on the piano, one hand playing melody and the other playing harmony. Carmen helping him prepare lunch while sharing stories about Marcus's performances and tours. Marcus sitting in Sarah's old chair looking completely at home in a way he hadn't since he was 18 years old. After lunch, it was time for goodbyes. The children hugged William tightly, making him promise to call them during the week and not wait until Sunday. Sophia whispered that she loved him and that she was proud to have such a talented grandfather. Jake made William promise to keep, working on new building projects so they could finish them together during the next visit. Carmen's goodbye was warm and genuine. Thank you for welcoming me into your family, she said. I can see where Marcus gets his good heart. Marcus was the last to say goodbye, and father and son stood facing each other in the driveway, both aware of the significance of this moment. Unlike their last parting 25 years ago, this goodbye was full of love and hope instead of anger and hurt. I'm proud of you, son, William said, words he had never been able to say when Marcus was young. You've built a wonderful life, and you're an amazing father. Your mother and I couldn't have asked for more. Marcus hugged his father tightly. I love you, Dad. We're going to make this work this time. No more letting pride get in the way. No more pride. William agreed. Just family. As the car pulled out of the driveway, William stood waving until it disappeared around the corner. The house felt quiet again, but it was a different kind of quiet than before. It wasn't the silence of loneliness, it was the peaceful quiet that comes after a wonderful celebration, when you're tired but happy and already looking forward to the next gathering. William walked through the house, straightening up the rooms his family had occupied. In Sophia's room, he found a handwritten note on the pillow. "Dear Grandpa William, thank you for the best weekend ever. I can't wait to come back and play more music with you. Love, your granddaughter Sophia." In Jake's room, there was a small wooden car that his grandson had carved with the child-sized tools, along with a note that said, "For Grandpa's desk at the store," from Jake. That evening, William called Marcus to make sure they had arrived home safely. Sophia and Jake got on the phone to tell him about the airplane ride and to thank him again for the swing set. The conversation was natural and easy, as if they had been talking regularly for years instead of months. "Dad," Marcus said before hanging up, "I want you to know that this weekend changed everything for me. I've been carrying anger and hurt for so long that I forgot what it felt like to just be happy with my family. Seeing you with the kids, seeing how much love you have to give, it reminded me that life is too short for grudges." After the call ended, William sat in his living room looking at the photos Carmen had taken during their visit. There was one of him and Jake working together at the small workbench, both of them concentrating intensely on their project. Another showed Sophia teaching him a simple piano piece, both of them laughing at his clumsy attempts to play. His favorite was a group photo Mrs. Johnson had taken of all 5 of them in Sarah's garden, with William in the center, surrounded by his family. William realized that Sarah had been right all along. Love had found a way. It had taken 25 years, but their family had been healed and was now stronger than ever. The house that had felt like a tomb for the past 3 years was alive again, with plans for future visits, phone calls, and shared memories. The next morning at the hardware store, everyone wanted to hear about his family's visit. William found himself sharing stories and showing pictures, accepting congratulations and well wishes from neighbors who had watched him struggle with loneliness for years. Mrs. Peterson brought in a cake to celebrate the reunion, and even Pete the barber stopped by to see the photos. "You look like a different man," Mrs. Johnson observed. 10 years younger and about 100 pounds lighter. That's what happens when you let go of old hurts and embrace love instead. As William organized inventory that afternoon, he thought about the future. There would be phone calls twice a week now instead of just Sundays. There would be Christmas together in Cedar Falls, with stockings hung by the fireplace and children's laughter filling every room. There would be summer visits, where he could teach Jake more advanced building techniques and listen to Sophia's musical progress. Maybe Marcus and Carmen would even consider moving back to Cedar Falls someday, so the grandchildren could grow up knowing their extended family. But even if they stayed in Nashville, William knew that the distance no longer mattered. The most important bridge had been rebuilt, the one between hearts that had been separated by pride and stubbornness. Love had indeed found a way, just as Sarah had always believed it would. That evening, as William locked up the hardware store and walked home through the familiar streets of Cedar Falls, he felt a deep contentment he hadn't experienced in decades. His family was whole again, scattered across different cities but connected by bonds that would never break again. Tomorrow would bring another phone call from his grandchildren, another chance to be the grandfather he had always wanted to be, another opportunity to love without reservation. William opened the door to his house and smiled at the family photos now displayed prominently on every surface. The silence was no longer empty. It was full of love, full of hope, and full of the promise of many more family gatherings to come. Sometimes, William reflected, the most beautiful endings are actually new beginnings in disguise.